Forgot. Ta-da! I knew there was something else. This is Signum Academy on Twitch. I'm Wesley. I think I've clicked all the things I need to click, and I've turned off my air for the minute, so it should be kind of quiet other than the sound of my voice, and even that will be silent and pause to let you hear some EarthBound music and sound effects here in a sec. Oh, you don't want to see all this. You want to see, there we are, or even better, over here on Twitch for the chat. If you have questions and comments, put them in Twitch chat. I think that's the only one I know how to find. Although maybe, man, I really should figure out a second monitor here. Anyways, we left off in Summers once more after our out of body experience where we ate the magic cake, the most magic of magic cakes that was compiled from all the bits and pieces of the leftovers, and it transported us in a dreamlike state to a far off land, and we became, for all intents and purposes, the prince of that kingdom of Dalam. His name is Pooh, unless you name him something else. And after a series of uh, riddles, I guess we could call them, where a lot of what you do is maintain calm, even though things seem very uh, dangerous. You are able to get reunited with the rest of the party in Summers. You face the ancestors of the royal line of the kingdom, and you have to allow them to do their worst. Now, this stream that we've been watching picks up at that point with a thread of the story that is not immediately obvious, I think, to most players. At least in my experience with this game and talking to people about it, um, there is a certain amount of direction that we get here where Pooh knows about this language that no one else is able to read. And this leads us to the museum. So she's selling magic tarts. They restore your psychic powers. It's the first time I believe that you can buy an item that will do that. Up until now, you've had to just find them. Of course, with Pooh, he's able to drink water and replenish psychic power. Again, this is not super obvious to most players. Okay, you cannot get in without paying a mission. It's a whopping $3 per person. That's the cheapest thing in town. Although the Stoic Club, I think, is free once you know the password. Anyway, so we're just going to skip right over all the wonderful jokes that are embedded here because I think we already looked at those. All right. There's a bit of a bribery that has to happen here. And no matter what you do, you'll hand over the tiny ruby, I think it's called. That rich kid who came by the other day, mentioned here. I think we know who that is. So this is probably your first battle that you'll get into with your complete 4-person party. And you should feel pretty powerful. At this point in the game, you have multiple characters who can use psychic power. You have 4 people to absorb damage from the enemy, so no one should get wiped out too quickly here, unless you're pretty unlucky. And if you just piece together the fact that a desert opponent will be weak to ice, you're probably gonna figure that out. Sorry about that. Just speaking of feeling pretty powerful here. The levels that you're gaining, of course, this is Pooh's first battle, will pretty quickly make him on par with the rest of the characters. All right, so this is what I wanted to read for you. Let me back up just a bit here. I think that just turned the volume all the way off. My bad. All right. To fight against the invaders, we built this pyramid fortress. However, our efforts were futile and we lost. Nonetheless, our pyramid was protected by the gods of Scaraba. The invaders will be reborn, and every millennium they will attack again. Even now, the invaders hide beyond space and time and build their evil stronghold. A place out of time is beyond the dark and is even farther beyond the lost underworld. The deep darkness is shrouded, it is without light. Only one with the hawk eye can pierce the dark. The Sphinx now watches over everything, waiting for the coming of a truly brave hero. And it's really hard to read this. There's kind of a dot at the top. I don't know if that was supposed to be the number 1, but we've got the numbers 2, 3, 4, 5 arranged in a pattern with that dot, which if you were to draw a line between the numbers in order, you'd come up with the picture of a star, or a almost complete star if you were to connect up the 5 back to the 1 again. So maybe that's why it's just a dot. The beginning and end point there, the peak of the star. So this is a pretty tough hint, but we'll deal with that. Dance in front of the Sphinx. And there's a real quick image there of a little light bulb popping in over top of Pooh's head. He says, Ness, let's go to Scaraba. The pyramid is the key. One more battle against the Shattered Man, one of these mummies. And they're pretty tough, but you can go all out here. There's no dungeon to crawl back through, so gain some more levels with Pooh. All right, rock on. Wait 1 second. Here's a picture of the hieroglyphs just for you. It's a reward for studying so hard. Got the hieroglyph copy. Use it in your human civilization class. Ha ha ha. All right. So I don't know if that's a real class. I don't know if this episode is modeled on some kind of weird. Oh, anyway, we've been out there for a long time now. So Dad wants you to take a little break. Yeah, this YouTube video is like 8 hours long or something. Anyway, the idea though that yeah, see, I knew there was another phone call going to interrupt us here. It's Mr. Fork of the Caribou Cultural Museum. I'm going to tell you my story. Something extraordinary. Mr. Spoon from the Forsyth Museum. Not exaggerating. It's fantastic. It's outrageous. Okay. Again, I think I'm going to need to pause here because I'm really distracted. I don't know about you. The player knows exactly what they're doing in this playthrough. But like I said, let's back up a minute. The idea that you could be actually interested in seeing something in a museum, that you could learn something from that thing in the museum that no one else actually knows, and that it could relate to your life personally and your friends, that some new friend could introduce you to this knowledge, this idea that you hadn't known before, and you could get excited about this idea and have a kind of intellectual awakening of that kind. It's complete fantasy, right? I don't know if that's ever really happened. I sure hope it has to somebody. Um, I think that that's what museums are really for, in the sense of what a museum is now today, and the way that we take kids on field trips to museums and we go and we hope that they expand their minds and that they wonder about the history of their world, the real world, right? Um, and yet feel like it's this magical place, like it has this incredible, fascinating, right? Like Mr. Spoon is talking about, outrageous discoveries are waiting for us to find them. Um, that's fascinating that that is embedded here in the game. Of course, in the game, it's in the form of the next step of our adventure. We're going to need this information. It's extremely practical in a way that in the real world, usually it wouldn't be. It's just kind of fun and interesting to learn something. The idea that there's a script, right, a writing system that someone can read because of their very unique upbringing, right? Pooh being from a distant land, being the prince and having tutors and everybody kind of waiting on him hand and foot. Um, that is not the experience of most people, I think. Generally, we don't have access to that kind of specialized training and especially language training anymore. Not many people have a language tutor, but if you do, good for you. That's awesome. That is, by the way, one of the things that Signum Academy offers on our clubs page. You can find out more about our language conversation groups and you can join. But in this case, it's clear that the hieroglyphics, as they call them, right, are modeled on ancient Egyptian material. Pooh is a traveler from a land like Japan or China, a kind of imaginary version of those places, possibly India. It's got the elephants. Um, but in any case, we're kind of playing fast and loose with the real world connections here so that in some weird way, ancient Egypt can flow directly into this ancient China or sort of lost Tibetan kingdom, whatever it is that Pu is from, and that he can know that language well enough to just on the spot translate the hieroglyphics so that we can understand what we need to do in our journey. This connects up Ness's journey with an ancient and potentially ongoing battle. It sounds like these evil enemies are reborn all through time, and that this is not the first time that such an adventure has happened. Such a cosmic struggle. Um, Again, there's very little specifics here. I don't know how deep we're supposed to read into this, but it does seem like there's some connection to the way that civilizations also rise and fall throughout history. The ancient Egyptian kingdoms had their glorious time when they built pyramids, and then they disappeared to the extent that nobody now knows how to read the hieroglyphics, except, of course, for Pu. So the pyramids are our goal now. We need to go there. We need to get this item called the Hawk Eye to see in the darkness, and that darkness is apparently the next step on our journey before we're able to get to that place beyond time and space, whatever they said about the hiding place of these enemies of humankind. They also mentioned the Lost Underworld. They're throwing around a lot of terms there, the dark with a capital D, whatever that means. Um, but then on our way out of the museum, mysteriously the secretary's gone missing and the phone's ringing. And if you check it, it's the other museum calling to gloat and share how excited they are about some discovery they've just made. So at this point, our path literally forks in two possible directions, or three, actually. Because, of course, with our ability to teleport, whether Ness has it, Pooh has it, we can also go back to his kingdom of Dalam. That's a place that we have visited now because he's in our party. So really, our path branches in three possible directions from this point. And this is the first time we've really had a lot of choice about what to do next in the game. So I think that this playthrough, this person chooses to go to Dalam first. The phone would suggest, oh, nope, I spoke too soon. They go back to Forside first, because the phone the most immediate suggestion here is to go and see what's going on with the museum in Forsyth. Um, then they go and do the Dalam journey, which is cool. So in Forsyth and in Dalam, there are 2 more Your Sanctuary locations. Now, for the sake of kind of moving us along through this game, I'm gonna actually skip those, unless, and please speak up if you'd really like to see that part of the journey, unless somebody says that they really want to see and talk about those 2 parts of the game. All right, we've got a few people tuning in, so if you are one of the people and you really want to see, oh, I did such a bad thing. This whole time I've been reading to you with my background in the way so you couldn't see. There wasn't that much to see, I guess, but I took it down. Okay. Now you can see some of what the game is doing. That such a fail on my part as a streamer. This is where that second monitor would really come in handy, you know. All right, at least I'm not messing up the reverb on there. Okay. Okay, there. Now you can see what I've been talking about this whole time. If you'd like to revisit Forsyth and the theater and the museum and the sewers, or if you'd like to go to Dalam and check out the bunny statues, speak now, or we're going to skip those. All right. All right. So I'm thinking, you know, we're already in this new school year here, and that means there's only a few months left in this year-long course that I've sketched out for us to proceed into the final game in the EarthBound Mother series, being the sequel to EarthBound, aka Mother 3. I think we need to kind of pick up the pace a little bit here. So we're going to skip these parts of the game. We're going to jump ahead a bit. And this playthrough has very helpfully actually broken these into some chunks for us. So we're going to skip the Dalam portion. And we're going to jump to the Scaraba portion. Well, not quite. We're going to see the sea journey because I love this part. Okay. So what I always do when I play the game, and what people that I know of who play it do, is what seems natural to me. You know, that whole thing with the magic cake was so that we could go and get the ship's captain to let us on his boat. So that's what I'm going to do first. Oh, first we're going to take a quick picture, but then we're going to talk to the captain. You made my wife wake up. She'd quit talking about all that serious crap. Yeah, work hard. If you're courageous, you'll probably see the Kraken and get seasick. You got your life for free. Luck will determine the outcome. So he's saying a lot of pretty interesting stuff there. We're reckless. Bon voyage. All right. And now we have our journey across the sea. Wait, I need to stop the boat. It's been a long time since I was on the open sea, so I feel seasick. A sailor who gets seasick. Huh. How come you guys are alright? That bald guy over there, your buddy, he came from Dalam? You must be quite the adventurers. Ha! Feeling much better now. Anchor's away. I even spelled away correctly. I mean, this localization. Come on. The incredible amount of work that went into translating this game. Still marvel at it. So after saying all that about how I wanted to pick up the pace, I do take the time to show this because there's a few really interesting things about this scenario. Here it comes. We get very small, we get zoomed out, we see how huge the Kraken is with respect to the ship, the boat that we're on. Again, this is a one-time battle, no other enemies before we're going to be able to refresh ourselves, so I recommend going all out in this battle. Big bottle rockets, heavy bazookas, strongest psi attacks. Take this Kraken out quickly because he can breathe fire. As you can see, he's breathing a little fire there. He can hit pretty hard. Ooh. Kraken was solidified, so he lost a turn. I think you can even use flash on the Kraken and maybe take it out in one shot that way, or blind it. Pooh has an ability in battle called Mirror, wherein he will take the form of the enemy for a turn or two and produce the enemy's attacks back at it. Kind of useless in most battles, but a fun thing to have. All right, so once again, we're leveling up, gaining some new powers. Oh, man, I thought you guys were just everyday little kids, but you defeated the Kraken? I helped in the battle. I threw my slippers. Maybe you didn't notice. That would have been very hard to see on the screen, maybe the size of a pixel. But this world map view is not something we've seen before in the game. At no point have we been able to step outside of a town or a dungeon and see a world map the way we do in lots of other role-playing games. So that's just a little hint that that is something that you could do in this game, and the developers actually chose not to. That was intentional on their part. I think that's really interesting. And here we can hear the music of this new town, Scaraba. There's the town map, there's the pyramid, the Sphinx. So the architecture, the whole vibe of this place, very African, Middle Eastern, Egyptian, the Dungeon Man. Oh. Must have lost it somewhere. This is one of the strangest little Easter eggs here. Chubby Kid did his business out here. Pokey's stink still hangs in there. So again, we're a step behind. We're in the footsteps of Pokey, and even stepping in places where he has done his business. But the reminder there of Dungeon Man, you have to be really paying attention to this game and to our playthrough of it to remember what that refers to. When we met Jeff in Winters, there was somebody there who was devising dungeons, and he called himself Brick Road at that point. But his dream was to develop dungeons and become one with them, become a true dungeon master. So it sounds like he's realized that ambition. Now, here we are in Scaraba. The music is very similar to some of the town themes before. I don't know if you noticed, but just of course with that change in tempo, in timbre, in the way that the sounds evoke a kind of exotic location. Somewhere that's not Japan, that's not the United States, but kind of the midpoint in between, and the place where we have deserts, we have palm trees, we have oases, we have pyramids, all right? This is the area, and this is kind of fun. YouTube tells you this is the most replayed section of this whole video. People want to see how to get through the pyramid. Again, did you catch that hint that was given to us? All right, so this player is going to show us. I'll go ahead and spoil this one for you. I know I've tried to hide a lot of this material, the spoiler material, but this one I think is worth showing because it's so obscure. All right. Battling some crested bukas, skelpions out in the desert. All right, we've made it. Let's check our copy of the hieroglyph real quick. Something important is recorded. All right, read the hieroglyphs. just read this. We'll skip over. Are you a thief, a warrior, or one who has come to see my majesty? The Sphinx says. You must decide what you really are. Therefore, what will you do? Aha. Warriors enter now. Search for the Hawkeye. Did you catch what just happened? There's these very conspicuous pedestals in the platform in front of the Sphinx. You have to dance in front of the Sphinx using those numbers that are provided, and it sketches the lines of a star. When you finish the star, the Sphinx grants you entry to the pyramid and calls you warriors. And I kind of have always wondered about that. But anyway, we'll take the Sphinx's word for it. Now we can go in the pyramid. This is the most replayed part of this whole video as people struggle with what to do in the pyramid. Honestly, I don't think it's that difficult. I'm not sure why people are so stuck in here. If you just explore every little cranny of this place, you'll find a hole to jump down. You'll find a lot of treasures, some butterflies. It is a tough part of the game. There's just a lot of enemies in a row. But if you've been leveling up, shouldn't be any trouble. Alright. Blah, blah, blah. Battling lots of foes. Going through the pyramid. Oh! We made it out of the pyramid. And now we're on the other side of the desert. We're going to lose Pooh for a minute here. Remember his master, who is going to give him ultimate training in the way of the star storm. Okay. And I always, again, kind of wondered about this part. You don't have a real choice here. And we don't see what this training is about. Okay. Wait until the time comes and they teleport away. I've always wondered... Whoa, I don't like what Paula's face is doing right there. Why that choice is made to have Pooh in your party for such a short time. Now, granted, if you know what you're doing, you might have spent quite a while with Pooh going to Forside, going to Dalam. But if you're like me and you go to this part first, Pooh's in your party for maybe an hour or so. And then he leaves for a while. And we don't get to play that part of the game. And I always kind of wish that we could. But to make up for it, we're going to find that Dungeon Man. Where's Dungeon Man? There he is. And they picked up a key to the tower. Again, that's how we're going to open the way into Dungeon Man. And this is one of the stranger parts of the game. The dungeon is filled with these messages from the creator of the dungeon. Brick Road. He wants you to explore. He wants you to rest up. So he provides doctors, nurses, a bench to stay, phone to call home. And endless commentary on the dungeon itself. So I think it's pretty interesting that not only is the game that is EarthBound presenting at this point a number of options for where to go, which is kind of a new thing. But it also at this point is almost like thinking about what it means to play a game, what it means to design a game, and in the form of this dungeon that's embedded here. It's talking about the decisions that the player is making and that the dungeon master is making in the layout of this place. This place, which is also now the body, the container for the dungeon maker himself, which we'll find at the end of the at uh, at the end of this path that we're on. Super interesting. Um, I think that possibly the developers of the game needed to remove Pooh from the game so that they could include this bit with Dungeon Man, because Dungeon Man is going to follow us once we get out of here. Check it out. He becomes your fourth party member briefly. The music is different. It's this kind of Beatles song almost, remixed. He follows you around the desert for the remainder of your journey here and just squashes flat any enemies that get in your way, um, which is cool. It's a callback to the tank. If you remember the original game for the NES, there's a portion there where you're in a desert and you're in a tank, and you very briefly have this sort of awesome power at your disposal. It's short-lived, of course, but I think this time it's really taken to another level. Again, with the idea that this person is also the designer of dungeons. Um, Remember how when you have your tea break and your coffee breaks, the designer of the game, Shigesato Itoi, speaks directly to the player, um, and reflects on how your journey has been going. So this is another way, I think, in which Itoi is embedded in the game, embodied in the game in a fashion. Um, I hesitate to draw a comparison too directly, but I think that there are ways that every author is inscribing themselves, writing themselves into their work. And so I think we could make the argument, if we wanted to, that Tolkien does this to an extent as well. Tolkien uh, has all sorts of layers of discussing his work as if it were real, as if it had a history to it, as if it were the translation of translations of this old story that's been handed down in some way. Um, he does this, I think, because he loves that sort of thing. He loves old languages and he loves discovering things, finding things out, and then working on them, bringing them to an audience, and enjoying them with other people. He's always joining clubs, language clubs, reading clubs, writing clubs. He um, he really wants his kids to be as excited about languages as he is, and you see this in his letters from Father Christmas. And of course, his day job is working on languages. He's a professor, and he's writing important papers and essays and speeches about these languages. You can go and read those, and we studied some of them, gosh, a long time ago now in Signum Academy here. But anyway, that's all to say that um, this journey through the desert brings us to a new friend, separates us temporarily from one other new friend, um, and it drops us off at the deep darkness. So for next time, we'll pick up there. I think we will have some interesting um, pieces of, again, of choice and of places where players tend to get a little lost in this game for our next discussion. I do hope that you're playing along with us. Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry. 8-Bit Cats Rule. You never heard of this game. I do hope you'll check it out if you're still there. It's called EarthBound. It's a 1995 RPG. It is the basis for games like Undertale, and Ness appears in Super Smash Brothers. I don't know if you might have played either of those. It's my favorite game, and I love to bring it into discussion with other things like Tolkien and other literature. But it's time to let you go. There's some rules on the chat that I hadn't seen before, but that's good. I think that's very good that you were all following the rules. Thanks for that comment, 8-bit cats rule. Sorry I didn't see it till the very end here. Do you have any other questions about it? I'd be happy to try to explain a little bit more about what we're up to here, but if you can find a way to play along, I think that's really the best way to experience Earthbound, of course. If not, you can find these playthroughs with no commentary. They still kind of walk you through a little bit too much, I think. They don't let you make up your own mind and figure things out for yourself, but that's just the trade-off, I guess. Um, hey, so thanks again for listening, for watching, and I hope that your new school year is going well so far. We are really within a few discussions, give or take 3, 4 maybe. Um, so that brings us to September, October, probably November and December. Then we'll have to kind of go through Mother 3 at a bit of a gallop, but that's okay. It is a super interesting game, one that not a lot of people have played and maybe have heard of. I think that most people um, would really benefit from playing Earthbound first and then going back to the original Earthbound beginnings, and then going to Mother 3, the sequel. Um, but so anyway, we'll talk about that more because we're going to make some time for it because we're going to move through Earthbound in the next few discussions here. So thanks again for joining me. Uh, have a great Labor Day, those in the US and Canada, I think. And I'll see y'all in a couple of weeks. Take care.